At the Davos Forum, Trump mentioned remarks along the lines of, "We, the U.S., do not need Canada's oil and gas," which stirred considerable controversy. Generally, the Davos Forum is a platform where political and business elites from around the world discuss the global economic climate, promoting globalization, multilateralism, and sustainable development. Yet Trump's advocacy of America first and his claim that we don't need Canada's oil and gas somewhat contradicts the typical international cooperation ethos of Davos, generating uncertainty regarding the future of energy partnerships between the U.S. and Canada, as well as between the U.S. and other allies. Possible effects on the global economy. Global energy prices and supply chain. Fluctuations. Globalization of energy markets. Oil, natural gas, and other energy resources are highly mobile in the global market. Although the United States has significantly increased production thanks to the shale oil and shale gas revolution, the international energy market is not isolated. Any major economy reducing or increasing imports will affect the global supply-demand balance. For instance, if the U.S. claims it doesn't need or needs very little Canadian oil and gas, the world market may see shifts in supply allocations, changes in trade routes, and subsequent price volatility. Confidence and order in international trade. If other countries follow this example, promoting energy self-sufficiency and treating it as a geopolitical weapon, the established order of global energy trade could be disrupted, exacerbating tensions among regions and nations. Mounting international tensions. Should the U.S. continue to pursue unilateralism or America First tactics on the global stage, dismissive of its traditional energy partners, other nations may choose more diversified partners. Europe and Asian countries might favor purchasing oil and gas from more stable exporters with lower political risks. This could create fissures in economic cooperation among North American countries, e.g., the U.S. and Canada, and further fragment and complicate the global energy landscape. Heightened geopolitical risk. Energy has always been closely linked to geopolitics. The U.S. is one of the world's leading oil producers and consumers. Canada is also a major energy exporter. If the U.S. drastically reduces imports from Canada, the latter may seek other overseas markets, such as Asia, the Middle East, or Europe. Intensified competition could spark new points of conflict and raise uncertainties at the macroeconomic and political levels. Possible impact on Canada. Economic aspects. Dependence on U.S.-Canada. Trade. A significant portion of Canada's oil and gas exports goes to the U.S. Although Canada has been working to expand into other markets, geographical proximity existing, pipeline infrastructure, and similar legal frameworks have made U.S.-Canada energy cooperation particularly strong. If the U.S. reduces its demand for Canadian energy, Canada may face short-term economic setbacks, including inventory buildup and lowered capacity utilization in its oil and gas sectors. Cost of finding new export markets, identifying new buyers, building new pipelines, and developing liquefied natural gas (LNG) export facilities all require substantial capital investment and negotiation. The pressure on Canada is not limited to the oil and gas itself, but also affects the entire supply chain, political dimensions. Shifting foreign policy and negotiations, Canada may need to adjust its foreign policy, enhancing energy partnerships with Europe and Asia, particularly fast-growing Asian markets. At the same time, Canada must maintain overall economic and trade ties with the U.S., given the deep interdependence in not only energy, but also other goods and services. Domestic political debate. Trump's statements may also reignite debates in Canada about the future of its oil and gas sector and environmental policies. Should the country ramp up development and export efforts or proceed more conservatively, focusing on industrial transformation and renewable energy? Such disputes are likely to intensify in Canada's domestic discourse. Possible impact on the United States itself. energy diversification, and self-sufficiency. In recent years, U.S. oil and gas production has surged, partly due to the shale revolution, making the U.S. a major global energy exporter. However, claims like "we don't need Canadian oil and gas" may serve more as political rhetoric aimed at domestic voters than an accurate portrayal of market realities. Can the U.S. truly meet all its needs under all circumstances? Faced with supply security concerns or global geopolitical instability, the U.S. will likely still require flexibility in international markets. If political factors disrupt supply chains or international trade routes, the U.S. economy could face fallout in the form of price volatility and higher production costs, diplomacy and relations with allies, deterioration in U.S.-Canada relations. The U.S. and Canada are tightly bound via the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, now updated as the USMCA, as well as in political, economic, and security matters. Should Trump's remarks provoke greater controversy, they risk undermining the strategic trust between the two countries, adversely affecting the broader North American economic partnership and political stability. Implications for other allies. If the U.S. openly sends unfriendly signals toward a close neighbor and ally, other allies may become more cautious about cooperation with the U.S., triggering ripple effects in various sectors. Domestic political calculations. Trump's approach often highlights American interests in public venues, appealing to certain domestic voter blocs, particularly those who champion energy self-sufficiency as a symbol of strong American industry. This might yield short-term advantages in political contests, but in the long run, the complexity of geopolitical and economic interests far exceeds the scope of political slogans. A misstep could harm the U.S. economically and diplomatically. Who benefits and who loses? Short-term rhetorical dividend. By leveraging nationalism or economic populism, Trump might garner support in electoral or political battles, and certain U.S. energy producers could enjoy short-lived policy favors. Yet, over-reliance on domestic resources or sparking trade conflicts may prompt retaliatory measures by other nations through diplomacy, trade, and investment, thereby increasing vulnerability. Long-term consequences. A potential lose-lose. The U.S. and Canada are deeply interlinked in energy, economics, geography, and security. If relations sour, both economies stand to suffer. Citizens and energy sector workers in both countries may bear the brunt of market instability and price volatility. On a broader global scale, if major economies opt for isolationist energy, independence, or use energy as a bargaining chip, international energy cooperation may weaken further, increasing uncertainty and hindering global economic recovery and sustainable development. Responses and strategies. Multilateral dialogue and international cooperation. A stable global energy market requires major powers to mutually respect each other and foster multilateral cooperation. Whether the U.S., Canada, or other nations that import or export energy, they should continue dialogue within platforms like the WTO, G20, and APEC, working together to draft rules and reduce unnecessary trade barriers or sanctions. Accelerating energy transformation and diversification. Any nation overly dependent on a single source of energy or a single export market risks instability. Canada needs to speed up diversification, not only in exporting oil and gas, but also in investing in renewable energy infrastructure to drive new economic growth. The U.S. similarly needs to diversify its energy sources or develop cleaner energy to mitigate geopolitical and environmental pressures. As the global shift to clean energy accelerates, future conflicts over fossil fuel supply might be partially alleviated. Rational political expression, less inflamed rhetoric. Statements made by political figures in international settings carry weight not just in domestic politics, but also for global cooperation and supply chains. Leaders should exercise caution and rational judgment when addressing bilateral or multilateral issues, avoiding contradictions between political slogans and practical interests. Incorporating philosophical and humanistic insight. Transcending division, pursuing balance. Eastern wisdom, the doctrine of the mean and the concept of harmony. The doctrine of the mean emphasizes moderation, neither excess nor deficiency, staying true to one's core intentions. Competition and cooperation between countries or corporations are not absolute opposites. Rather, shared interests can be found through dialogue, enabling mutual success. The concept of hey underscores coexistence and mutual benefit. Applied to international relations or trade, it advocates a cooperative perspective that seeks common prosperity, minimizing zero-sum thinking. Western thought. Plato's Philosopher King and Kant's Universal Community. In the Republic, Plato argues that genuine leadership demands reason, wisdom, and a concern for the collective good, rather than pandering to fleeting demands or populist sentiment. Kant's notion of world citizenship posits that lasting peace and prosperity require moral and rational principles guiding human society. In today's globalized environment, nations must engage under a shared moral framework, respecting each other and forging alliances. Trump's remarks at the Davos Forum have multiple implications for the global economy, Canada, and the United States itself. In the short term, such statements may achieve certain political objectives domestically, but from a long-term and global perspective, the consequences could be detrimental to North American regional integration, the stability of the world energy market, and prospects for sustainable economic development. Confronted with the dual challenges of global competition and climate change, neither unilateralism nor provocative political rhetoric can provide lasting solutions. Major economies and energy-exporting nations still need pragmatic, multilateral cooperation to establish more effective and balanced arrangements in mutual interests. They also require philosophical wisdom to remind themselves that beyond self-interest and confrontation lies a higher path, one of shared solutions and collective understanding. By following the direction of the times and driving collaborative innovation and mutual growth, we can build a more resilient and inclusive global economic system, benefiting more nations and populations.